It was more than 20 years ago, when I was a boy. My name is Tora, and my friends are Yuji and Hiroki, to give them pseudonyms. It was summer vacation in the 6th grade of elementary school, and we used to get together and play in the neighborhood park every day. When the sunset sky began to turn bright red, Hiroki says, "Let's go home soon." Yuji, a single parent and a loner when he goes home, stops us both and says, "Let's play a little longer." Hiroki, who has a strict curfew, says, "Sorry, let's play again tomorrow," and leaves. When Hiroki is out of sight, Yuji always complains, "He's always so bad with me." It's dark in the park and it's just the two of us. I try to make conversation with Yuji, but my parents scold me if I don't go home soon. Perhaps he could sense my behavior, but Yuji looked a little annoyed and said, "You want to go home too, don't you, Tora? You can just go home." I was a little miffed, but I thought it was a regular occurrence and tried to get back on the bike. "I found an abandoned house the other day," Yuji said. I thought he was trying to get my attention again. I pretended not to hear him and tried to ride my bicycle again. "I'm going to explore the abandoned house tonight," he said in a louder voice than before. I was interested in abandoned houses, exploring, but I didn't want to get angry with my parents. I said, "Yuji, you should go home too." I thought at the time that I didn't have the courage to go alone anyway. I went home, took a bath, and finished dinner when the phone rang. It was Yuji's mother. I answered the phone to find that it was Yuji's mother, who asked, "Hasn't our Yuji been to your place?" I was mildly offended by the abusive tone of the caller's voice, but she answered, "Yuji is still at the park." I was mildly annoyed at the abusive tone of her voice, but when I told her that Yuji might still be playing at the park, she hung up the phone with a clatter. I was miffed at Yuji's mother, but a little worried when I heard that Yuji had not come home. Yuji was a bit of a naughty boy, often playing late into the night, and was rumored to have been hanging out with the wrong people. When he went to bed around 10 o'clock at night, he fell asleep immediately, probably tired from playing. Early the next morning, his mother came to wake him up in a fit of blood. Yuji's mother called me and said he hadn't come home since yesterday. She's yelling at him, asking if he's here. Again, I thought, but this is the first time he hasn't been home all night. I was getting worried that he really went exploring to the abandoned house he mentioned yesterday and something might have happened to him. I called Hiroki and told him what had happened. We met up at our usual park and met up with each other. It was tough when Mom told me not to hang out with Yuji anymore. Hiroki says with a tired look on his face. "His mother's a strange one," I say. Hiroki said meaningfully, "Well, I think I understand that too." "What? You think you understand?" I asked. "Oh, it's nothing. Nothing, I just need to find a place where Yuji might go." We went around to the place where the three of us used to play together, but we couldn't find Yuji. We went back to the park and took a break to drink some water. She must have noticed us, because she slowed down her car and drove slowly past. She glared at us with bloodshot eyes, probably because Yuji had not come home, and drove away. It seemed as if she was mumbling something in her mouth. "This is scary," said Hiroki. "Ha ha. Tora, did Yuji say anything to you yesterday after I left first?" "Ah. I'm an idiot, but Hiroki told me about the abandoned house and I remembered it." I told Hiroki about yesterday's conversation. "An abandoned house, maybe it's the one over there." Hiroki seemed to know something about it. "Hiroki, do you know where it is?" "If you know where it is, let's go there and see," I said. I don't really want to go there," Hiroki said. "I don't want to go there," Hiroki insisted. Hiroki was getting impatient with me. "Aren't you worried about Yuji? Let's get out of here." Hiroki was reluctant to go, but I let him lead the way, and we pedaled for an hour. The road was no longer paved and turned into a gravel road. "It's at the end of this village." We arrived at a small village by the river. "Is this the same area as?" "Yes, Yes. I understood why Hiroki did not want to go there. This was the area that his parents had always told him not to go near. The houses in the village looked more than half dilapidated. The people walking around were sooty and dirty. When several elderly people noticed us, they stopped and stared at us. Their eyes were wild and their stares were so strong that you could almost feel hatred in them. I looked closely and saw a small, tattered flag that did not belong to Japan, waving in the wind. Hiroki, is that abandoned house in this area? No, I believe it is in the mountains, a little further away from this area, I answered in a small voice. Do you have to go through this village to get there? Hiroki said, yes. 50 meters away, several residents were staring at us. I was scared, but I was also worried about my friends. We decided to ride our bicycles at a speed that would not arouse suspicion. We rode on, avoiding eye contact as much as possible. After a little further, we came across some old men lying on the ground. When they noticed us riding on our bicycles, they swiveled their upper bodies and looked at us. We rode on, avoiding eye contact as much as possible. After a little further, we came across some old men lying on the ground. When they noticed us riding on our bicycles, they swiveled their upper bodies and looked at us. I proceeded onward, pretending not to see him. As we passed through a village, Hiroki's bicycle suddenly came to a stop. Then he ran to the end of the street as if rolling down it. What's going on, Hiroki? What are you doing? When I called out to him, Hiroki suddenly vomited on the side of the road. I asked him, are you all right? Did you get sick? I rubbed his back and called out to him. Then Hiroki said, Tora. There. Hiroki pointed with tearful eyes. Where Hiroki pointed, there were many headless chickens hanging from a tree. They were draining their blood to eat them, and there was a puddle of bright red blood on the ground. When I saw this, I involuntarily vomited. I left the place in a hurry and went into the mountain to take a short rest, hid my bicycle in the shade of a secluded tree, and sat down. Hiroki, even if there was an abandoned house here, would Yuji be able to come to a place like this by himself? I said. Hiroki looked down a little and said in a small voice, yes, I can. Hiroki looked down a little and said in a small voice, I can come. No, I can't. Tora, don't you know? Hiroki suddenly said. What? I asked back. I saw several men coming into the mountains from the direction where the village was located. Oh no, Tora, we need to hide. We lowered ourselves into the shade of a tree and waited to see what would happen. A couple of old men were carrying large sacks up the mountain. The old men were grinning and talking in a language we did not understand. What are they saying? Tora, they might be heading for the abandoned house. We followed the old men, keeping our distance from them, although we were scared of them. After a while, we saw a building that looked like a barracks hut. Tora, that's the abandoned building, Hiroki said. I've always wondered how you knew about this place, Hiroki said. I asked him, I've been friends with Yuji since the 3rd grade, and we've only been here once. You guys have many adventures in places I don't know about, don't you? I mean, Yuji's adventures. Well, I'm not going to do it. What? You're curious, tell me. Don't worry, you'll find out soon enough. While we were having this conversation, the men went into the abandoned house. Hiroki urged me to slowly approach the abandoned house. I went around to the back of the abandoned house so as not to make any noise. When I went around to the back of the house, I heard voices coming from inside the abandoned house. A lot of men were shouting in a non-Japanese language, making a lot of noise. Tora, there's a window over here. Hiroki, who has gone on ahead of me, beckons to me. I approach and through the sooty glass I get a glimpse of what is going on inside. There is the old man I saw earlier. He turns to the center of the room, raises his fist and says something. Damn it, Hiroki, I can't see what's important. I'm going to find a place where I can see a little more inside, so please stay here, Tora, Hiroki then bent down and proceeded to look for another window in the abandoned house. I was thrilled every now and then when a loud voice came thumping out of the abandoned house. After peeking in for a while, he heard, "Ah!" I heard Hiroki's voice. For a moment the inside of the abandoned house became quiet, but I guess it went unnoticed, and then the noise started up again. I slowly approached the place where I heard Hiroki's voice. Hiroki was on his buttocks, wobbling and shaking, and shedding tears. In a low voice so that the people inside wouldn't notice me. "Hiroki, what's wrong? Are you okay?" Hiroki shakes his head and cries in a muffled voice. I pat Hiroki's trembling shoulder and look into the abandoned house. There was a sooty glass window as before, and when I peeked inside, I saw men sitting around something. All the men are looking at the center of the room and making a lot of noise. Some were giggling, others were yelling and screaming. The eerie scene gave me goosebumps. The men were looking at a rounded fence, and from inside the fence, something like feathers were flying up. I couldn't see the inside of the fence clearly, so I climbed onto a stump at my feet and stretched out, and there was Yuji. His clothes were removed, his mouth, arms, and legs were bound, and his face was bruised. He was tied to what looked like a wooden stake. Around Yuji, a bird that looked like a chicken but was much bigger than a chicken was flailing about. When I looked closely, I saw that the large bird had a short blade strapped to its leg, and Yuji was bleeding from the side area and convulsing. I was so shocked and terrified that I couldn't move and was shaking. Then Hiroki, perhaps regaining his senses, tugged on my hand. "Let's run away." I was so scared that I was shaking. We returned to the place where we had hidden our bicycles, and ran as fast as we could to get away from the place as quickly as possible. On the way, we passed through the village, but it seemed to be deserted, as if everyone had gone to an abandoned house. It would take almost an hour to get to our hometown, no matter how fast we rode, but there were few police stations in the countryside, so we rode our bicycles frantically. When we finally returned to our hometown, we told our parents what we had seen, sobbing messily. Our mother said, "Did you guys go there? Do you want to die?" She yelled at us with tears streaming down her face. The father called the police, and a short time later, several police cars drove in front of the house. I saw Yuji's mother in one of them. As she passed by, Yuji's mother was staring at me and Hiroki with eyes as cold as ice. Her eyes were as cold as ice. She kept turning around and staring at us even after we passed in front of her. Her eyes were just like the ones she had seen in that village. I dropped Hiroki off in his father's car and said, "See you tomorrow," to which Hiroki gave me a little smile. When I returned home after dropping Hiroki off safely, my relatives and even my grandmother came to see me and scolded me. Then my father said to me, "Tora, I know you're just a kid and you don't understand the hard stuff, but listen to me." I nodded in silence. "The place you told me about today is Japan, but it's not Japan. Have you seen the people who live there? Did you see the people living there? They weren't dressed properly, were they? They stubbornly live in such a land forever. And they keep people from this side away. They have a completely different culture and customs from ours. To them, we seem to be the enemy. We are always ready to welcome them to our side. We can go to school and have jobs. There are many people from that area who have come to this side of the country and are living normal lives. Your friend Yuji is one of them. However, there are also people there who have twisted feelings that those who left are traitors. Yuji has been playing there since he was little, so I'm sure he thought he was playing in peace. But some twisted people must have caught his eye. Yuji's mother says that it is your fault that he has suffered so much this time. She thinks he went there because you didn't play with him and treated him like an outsider. He has a different way of thinking, or maybe he's paranoid. He's twisted. Well, don't worry about Tora and Hiroki. But I won't allow the child to go there alone anymore." After saying that, his father lay down in the Buddhist room and fell asleep. I was also tired from the daytime and fell asleep the moment I got into the futon. The next day, Hiroki and I met up at our usual park. We didn't tell each other about yesterday, and somehow spent the whole day at the park. We were on our way home when the sunset sky turned red. Then the summer vacation was over and it was a new semester, and I found out that Yuji had transferred to a new school. I asked the teacher where he was going, but she wouldn't tell me, saying it was a family matter. And before we knew it, 10 years had passed and we had grown up. There is no longer that decaying village there. A prefectural road runs through it, and a tunnel runs through the mountain where the abandoned house used to be, serving as the main road to the town. I wonder where the inhabitants of that village have gone. I wonder if the wild eyes I saw that day are still staring at me somewhere on this side of the road. This concludes this story. Thank you for listening to the end.